On November 24th, Liberation Times published an article titled, "Black Friday, Republican Leadership Takes Axe to UFO Transparency Legislation." I will read some of it. Liberation Times has learned that this week, two influential Republicans, namely Representative Mike Rogers, chair of the House Armed Services Committee, and Representative Mike Turner, chair of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, have escalated their efforts to eliminate the UAP Disclosure Act from the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, for fiscal year 2024. Before we go any further with Christopher Sharp's article, here's Mike Turner in June giving his take on UFO whistleblower David Grusch's claims.
You had a big week, you and your colleagues. There was also a hearing on UFOs. Let's take a look at one of the exchanges. Watch this.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
Wow. Congressman, what can you tell us about this? Non-human biologics?
You know, Maria, I always love it when you have somebody who comes forward and testifies about things that they don't know anything about. I mean, the most, I think, striking aspect of all of the testimony was repeatedly over and over again, the whistleblowers had to say, actually, I don't have any knowledge of this. Somebody else told me that. I mean, really, this would take thousands and thousands of people for such an unbelievable cover-up to be occurring. And for people to speak with such confidence over something that they do not know is, I think, something certainly everybody needs to be concerned about.
Let's continue reading some of Sharp's article. The two representatives have successfully garnered support from Senate Minority Leader Senator Mitch McConnell and the new Speaker of the House, Representative Mike Johnson, who are now backing their endeavors to either remove or significantly weaken the UAP Disclosure Act. The news came during the Thanksgiving holiday, when representatives and senators were at home with their families. It comes 2 years after the Department of Defense and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence thwarted extensive UAP language proposed by Senators Kirsten Gillibrand and Marco Rubio. It is understood that the four powerful Republicans are prepared to compromise by amending language contained in the act, although that would involve stripping it of its key provisions and crippling the act of any meaningful power. A little later in the article, Sharp writes, sources suggest that despite the current challenges, allies within the Senate, House, and White House are gearing up to resist Republicans. Regarding his coverage of those that may push back against the Republicans trying to kill the UAP Disclosure Act from the NDAA, you'll have to read his article that is linked below. Before we go any further, let's quickly review the clip that I showed you earlier in this video, where Representative Mike Turner, chair of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, was asked by the host, Maria Bartiromo, and I quote, "Congressman, what can you tell us about this non-human biologics?" Representative Mike Turner responds, "You know, Maria, I always love it when you have somebody who comes forward and testifies about things that they don't know anything about. I mean, the most striking aspect of all the testimony was repeated over and over again. The whistleblower had to say, actually, I don't have any knowledge of this. Somebody else told me that. I mean, really? This would take thousands and thousands of people for such an unbelievable cover-up to be occurring and for people to speak with such, confidence over something they do not know is, I think, something certainly everybody needs to be concerned about." So Representative Mike Turner says that David Grusch testified about things he doesn't know. Okay, I don't think that's true at all. He's spoken to 40 plus witnesses. He's read official intelligence reports within the holdings of the government. And he does have some kind of firsthand knowledge that he can't publicly broach yet. In the following clip, David Grusch is asked how he knows the U.S. government has these items. These items are referencing intact and partially intact alien vehicles.
But how do you know they have these items? Because you've not seen them yourself, have you?
There's certain things that I have firsthand access to that I can't publicly discuss at this time. However, myself and other colleagues interviewed, 40 individuals. Both are current and former highly distinguished intelligence and military personnel that were specifically on these programs. And those that were willing, I directed to the Intelligence Community Inspector General. So the Inspector General was able to interview these people that do have direct firsthand information.
Right. So they have that information directly. Have they actually seen these vehicles?
The individuals I interviewed that I directed to the Inspector General, yes, they have the firsthand experiences, yes.
Right.
In the following clip, Washington correspondent for News Nation, Joe Khalil, is interviewing Marco Rubio, who is within the Gang of Eight and is the vice chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. In this clip, he basically talks about the people that he himself has spoken to that are witnesses from within these legacy UFO programs. And Senator Rubio is saying that the people that he spoke to are corroborating what David Grusch stated. And then he goes on to say, one or two things are possible as a result of this.
And I would put it to people this way. There are one or two things here are true. Either what he is saying is partially true or entirely true, or we have some really smart, educated people with high clearances and very important positions in our government who are crazy and are leading us on a goose chase. One of these two things is true. Either what they're telling us is true, or we've got some people in important positions that are doing this for some reason. So either one is a problem. We got to figure this out. We can't ignore it.
Yes, Representative Mike Turner, just as Senator Marco Rubio said, we got to figure this out. We can't ignore it. You can't just rely on the rhetoric. David Grusch doesn't know what he's talking about, which, by the way, I think is completely false. But even if we were to subscribe to your notion that David Grusch doesn't know what he's talking about, does that also apply to all of these firsthand witnesses that have gone to the Inspector General, the Intelligence Community Inspector General, that have spoken to members of Congress and that have testified under oath? Does it apply to them? Of course it doesn't apply to them. So I don't understand why Mike Turner is having such a dismissive attitude towards something that if it's true, is a huge blow to the democracy of the United States of America and is antagonistic to the American way and represents a tyrannical control of information without any oversight. My goodness. In the following clip, Senator Rubio goes further into the nature of these witnesses.
Okay. So that category of people who have firsthand knowledge, who say they have actually seen these kinds of things, do you find many of them credible?
Well, I don't find them either not credible or credible because we have no basis. Understand some of these claims are things that are beyond sort of the realm of what any of us has ever dealt with. What I think we owe them is just a mature, understand listening and trying to put all these pieces together and just sort of intake the information without any prejudgment or jumping to any conclusions in one direction or another. I will say I find most of these people at some point, or maybe even currently, have held very high clearances and high positions within our government. So you do ask yourself, like, what incentive would so many people with that kind of qualification, these are serious people, have to come forward and make something up?
Here's a very important quote from David Grusch. He said it on his recent appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience. I'm going to read it to you, and then we'll engage in some commentary. Yeah, I can't get into if we've made progress if they've made progress, because that's like straight up some national security stuff. He's referring to progress in understanding these anomalous technologies. But like, just to be clear, I want the US populace to learn a lot of this. And this is why, another reason why I went public is like, I need to call everybody out. I'm not here to admonish the entire government, mind you, but there is an element of the US government and its clear defense contractor base that, we have a 3-branch of government oversight issue. Like going back to Harry Reid. Harry Reid didn't even get access. I talked to him myself to confirm that, and he said he was going to go talk to Biden because I think there needs to be a disclosure plan. This goes back to what's currently in legislation right now, and that's super important because 90-some-odd% of this should be open for public discovery, public analysis, and academia. This should be like, at very least, true nuclear programs such as nuclear physics you study at a university, nuclear weapons, classified, because that makes people in the pink mist. That's really sensitive. We don't need everybody to know how to do that. So I think the stuff that is like legit weapons related stuff, that's like straight up national security stuff. Sure, reasonably classify that. But these programs, we need to change. And that's why you saw the Schumer amendment, right? And I think you might have read that on air or something in a previous episode, I remember correctly. Chuck Schumer. And I knew about the amendment a couple months before I went public. And that's kind of another reason why I did what I did. I'm like the only guy that kind of has the opportunity to do this. I know what's in the chute, so to speak, that Chuck Schumer and his staff had with the Schumer amendment, which is 67 pages of literal "we want to disclose." And I'm like, I have to spike the football by going public because, I can read the tea leaves on the Hill. And I think they were hesitant to do anything without being able to point to something publicly. And I'm like, I'll be the guy and just send it. And then, of course, a month after I went public, I guess I pushed Chuck Schumer over the ledge. And I do know he talked to the White House about the amendment too, because not like Chuck Schumer is going to propose groundbreaking legislation like that without talking to the National Security Advisor or President. Like, I imagine he did so. And so you have the 67-page amendments, right? It's called the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023, known as the Schumer Amendment. Co-sponsors were Young, Gillibrand, Rubio, Rounds. Yeah, and Young. And kudos for these senators for stepping up to the plate, because they know this is real. I know what meetings they've had with certain other individuals that are, even more credible than myself. And so this act, which is like super important, is currently in conference as we speak in Capitol Hill. I'm going to be straight up with you all and keep it 100, keep it funky. When I saw the interview with Joe Rogan, I was literally blown away for a variety of reasons, for a multitude of reasons. But one of the reasons is because David Grusch called out so many people by name, and you got to be crazy to do that if you're full of it. You would have to be completely and utterly unhinged to call out people by name the way that he did if you're not telling the truth. If you don't know 100% that you're telling the truth. You know what I'm saying? And that might have gone over a lot of people's heads. I don't know. But if you're a liar, or if you're a delusional, or if you're mistaken, and you're calling people out like this, it's going to come back to haunt you. Just logistically, it's going to come back to haunt you. So that interview kind of led me to perceive further, because, I'm always going to have some lingering doubt, right? I don't know something until I know something. And I don't know. I haven't seen proof. But at the same time, not seeing proof is not an excuse to turn your brain off and not engage in analysis. So even though I haven't seen proof, What I am seeing is evidence building that he's telling the truth. So this was just one instance where he called people out by name. I mean, it's unbelievable. He called out the former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, who I know has passed, but still, it could be tracked back to him. He also called out the sponsors of the proposed legislation for the 2023 NDAA. That is Schumer, Rounds, Rubio, and Gillibrand. And he said about them explicitly, and I'm just going to quote, and I quote, and kudos for those senators for stepping up to the plate because they know this is real. I know what meetings they've had with certain other individuals that are, even more credible than myself. And so this act, which is like super important, is currently in conference as we speak in Capitol Hill. Now, I think this provides greater context to what Gang of Eight member Senator Marco Rubio, vice chairman of the, I think the Armed Services Committee, said in that most recent clip, saying that these people have high clearances. Why would they lie? They were in a position to know, and so forth. Yes, he had some or at least he expressed some skepticism, because as he said, we're dealing with otherworldly stuff. Because we're dealing with allegations of the recovery of alien spacecraft, alien biologics. You know what I'm saying? So this is just one situation where Grusch called out people. And I think as we progress with this video, I'm going to cite another area where he called out people by name. But like I said, and I can't drive this home enough. I cannot drive this home enough. If you call out people like he did and you're lying, you're just not going to get away with it. Let's go into some tweet interactions, which will help clarify what we're covering this evening. So Ross Coulthard writes, and he's quoting the Liberation Times story that I opened with at the beginning of this video. This story is 100% accurate. An extremely powerful defense aerospace lobby is pushing key politicians in Congress to block the Schumer amendment to the NDAA, to which Matthew Pines responds, the question is why? If there is nothing to this UAP stuff, what harm would it do to have an independent review board look into it? Seems we need some reporter to look into what exactly is motivating the mics to weaken the Schumer amendment in the fiscal year 24 NDAA, to which Nick Pope responds, I'm not convinced that the objection to an independent review board is UAP specific, and I think it reflects a more general irritation within government at what they see as outside interference. It's not interference, of course, it's oversight, but that's their attitude. The previously proposed in 2021 Aerial and Transmedium Phenomena Advisory Committee doubtless failed to make it into law for similar reasons, when plenty of other arguably more robust UAP-related provisions made it through. I've previously predicted that this proposal for a 9-person unidentified anomalous phenomena records review board will fail. I hope I'm wrong. To which Matthew Pines responds, of course executive agencies chafe at oversight and the prospect of a new de jure agency with unilateral authority to compel production of any UAP-related record would give normally hidebound intelligence and defense agencies hives. And yet we must reckon with these 7 findings. I'm going to read the 7 findings he cites that's in the proposed legislation. Amendment intended to be proposed by Mr. Schumer for himself, Mr. Rounds, Mr. Rubio, and Mrs. Gillibrand. At the appropriate place, insert the following. Title, Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Disclosure. This title may be cited as the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Disclosure Act of 2023 or the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023. Findings, declarations, and purposes. Findings and declarations. Congress finds and declares the following. All federal government records related to unidentified anomalous phenomena should be preserved and centralized for historical and federal government purposes. All federal government records concerning unidentified anomalous phenomena should carry a presumption of immediate disclosure, and all records should be eventually disclosed to enable the public to become fully informed about the history of the federal government's knowledge and involvement surrounding unidentified anomalous phenomena. Legislation is necessary to create an enforceable, independent, and accountable process for the public disclosure of such records. Legislation is necessary because credible evidence and testimony indicates that federal government unidentified anomalous phenomena records exist that have not been declassified or subject to mandatory declassification review as set forth in Executive Order 13526, due in part to exemptions under the Atomic Energy Act of 1954, as well as an overbroad interpretation of transclassified foreign nuclear information, which is also exempt from mandatory declassification, thereby preventing public disclosure under existing provisions of law. Legislation is necessary because Section 552 of Title V, United States Code, commonly referred to as the Freedom of Information Act, as implemented by the executive branch of the federal government, has proven inadequate in achieving the timely public disclosure of government-unidentified anomalous phenomena records that are subject to mandatory declassification review. Legislation is necessary to restore proper oversight over unidentified anomalous phenomena records by elected officials in both the executive and legislative branch of the federal government that has otherwise been lacking as of the enactment of this act. Legislation is necessary to afford complete and timely access to all knowledge gained by the federal government concerning unidentified anomalous phenomena in furtherance of comprehensive, open scientific and technological research and development essential to avoiding or mitigating potential technological surprise in furtherance of urgent national security concerns and the public interest. Purpose. The purpose of this title are to provide for the creation of the unidentified anomalous phenomena records collection at the National Archives and Records Administration, and to require the expeditious public transmission to the archivist and public disclosure of such records. So those were the 7 findings that Matthew Pines cited. And you'll notice that the Atomic Energy Act of 1954 was cited. Well, David Grusch has explained to us why that's in the legislation. And he's basically said that the secrecy architecture that has been implemented with UFOs was taken from the Manhattan Project. So the U.S. government, long time ago, classified everything about UAP as much as their most sensitive nuclear secrets. And so that's really why none of this has ever seen the light of day, because they've classified the living daylights out of it. There's been leaks from for decades, but it's only now that it's coming out in a way where the government cannot any longer contain it, which is why you're seeing what you're seeing, and which is why there will be ultimately confirmation of this reality, in my opinion. Now, if you paid close attention to what I said with those 7 findings, it's pretty clear that the people that wrote this legislation, Schumer, Rounds, Rubio, and Gillibrand, and whoever helped them, obviously believes this phenomenon is real, right? At least that's my perception. And recall with one of the citations, or the citation that I shared just a little bit earlier in this video from Grusch. What did he say? Grusch said, the sponsors of the Schumer amendment, Schumer, Rounds, Rubio, and Gillibrand, know that it's real. They have met with people more credible than me and have had meetings with them. Now, if you're not convinced that there may be truth to that, that's okay. We'll take care of that. On July 14th, 2023, there was a press release from the Senate Democrats, and I quote, Schumer, Rounds introduced new legislation to declassify government records related to related to unidentified anomalous phenomena and UFOs, modeled after JFK Assassination Records Collection Act as an amendment to NDAA. And here is a quote from that press release. For decades, many Americans have been fascinated by objects mysterious and unexplained, and it's long past time they get some answers, said leader Schumer. The American public has a right to learn about technologies of unknown origins, non-human intelligence, and unexplained phenomena. We are not only working to declassify what the government has previously learned about these phenomena, but to create a pipeline for future research to be made public. I am honored to carry on the legacy of my mentor and dear friend, Harry Reid, and fight for the transparency that the public has long demanded surround these unexplained phenomena. So Mike Turner and Mitch McConnell are both part of the Gang of Eight that are pushing back against this amendment to have UFO transparency from the U.S. government. Let's review a tweet that I've already shared because I just think it will make things clearer. And we're kind of going on this journey together because as I make this video, frankly, I begin to understand the scenario better myself. Matthew Pines writes to the article that from Liberation Times that Ross Coulthart is citing, and Matthew Pines says, the question is why? If there's nothing to this UAP stuff, what harm would it do to have an independent review board to look into it? Seems we need some reporters to look into what exactly is motivating the Mikes, both Mikes that are part of the Gang of Eight, to weaken the Schumer Amendment in the fiscal year 24 NDAA. And then Daniel Miller quotes Matthew Pines by writing this: no matter where you fall in the UAP issue, utter BS, aliens, or anywhere in between, it's hard to imagine a scenario where this bill isn't a good thing for clarity and transparency. Why in the world are members of the Gang of Eight pushing back on this? Under Matthew Pines' tweet that I already cited, Maya Benowitz writes, the people who think there's no there are the conspiracy theorists now, to which Matthew Pines responds, a rabid skeptic should go, if it costs a few million to impanel an official body with sweeping powers to investigate and declassify UAP records to once and for all put to bed this festering decades-long conspiracy, that would be money well spent. We don't see that here, do we? From Christopher Sharp's Liberation Times article, I'm just going to read 3 little paragraphs where he describes what the review board constitutes. And I quote, unveiled publicly in July 2023 by Senate Majority Leader and Democrat Chuck Schumer, the UAP Disclosure Act proposed the creation of a review board dedicated to disclosing information and materials related to UAP. The review board would be composed of 9 U.S. citizens nominated by President Biden and would have the authority to assess and advise on the release of UAP information and records. Additionally, any potential biological evidence indicating non-human intelligence and the craft they operate would be disclosed to the public. Under the plan, any materials or biological evidence of unknown origin or non-human origin would be subject to the power of eminent domain exercised by the U.S. federal government, meaning Lockheed Martin or any other aerospace company that might be in possession would be required to surrender them to the government. So this is pretty interesting. The presidential candidate, Vivek Ramaswamy, actually tweeted out that the Liberation Times article we've been covering. He wrote, the question is why, and of course the title of the Liberation Times article was New Republican Leadership Takes Axe to UFO Transparency Legislation. And then the author of the article, Christopher Sharp, quote tweeted it and wrote, from presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, one wonders whether other Republicans are asking the same question now. Now, I'm going to get behind the other camera and pour my heart out to you with a heart-to-heart. So I hope you can give me a few minutes before we make this video a wrap. But right before I do that, I want to share a little tiny fun video I made for Twitter On November 22nd, from the skies to the seas, UFO interactions are more varied than you can imagine. Let's uncover them. Craft in skies, craft in seas, craft in low Earth orbit, abductions, unexplained time loss, telepathic communication, military encounters, pilot encounters, UFOs disabling and surveilling our nukes, mass sightings, school landings in broad daylight, UFO crashes, UFO landings, physical traces, bodies recovered, craft recovered, animal mutilation, secret UFO programs in multiple countries, men in black, radar confirmation, satellite confirmation, sonar confirmations, mass blackouts, an 80-year terrestrial arms race occurring sub rosa, focus on reverse engineering alien technology, aliens walking among us. Could all this exist and there still be a cover-up that exceeds 70 years? Yes.
There's a sophisticated disinformation campaign targeting the U.S. populace, which is extremely unethical and immoral, and it's totally frightening.
You know something? I don't think I have much more to say, so allow that little video that I just played be the heart-to-heart. And please don't forget to subscribe, because I got my A game going and I'm covering as much as I can, and you don't want to miss my updates. If you'd like to support this channel, you can check out my merch shop where I sell t-shirts. You could become a patron. You could become a YouTube member. You could give me a one-time donation. All those potentialities can be accessed in the description box below, or you could just slap a like on this bad boy and I'll appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Special thanks to all patrons, YouTube members, those that have bought merch, those that have given me one-time donation. I couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.